let's actually pray that before we begin the study. Guan, you've led us right into the study, because this parable we're going to look at, the unjust steward, is, on the surface, it's an enigma. On the surface, it's contradictory. The Lord's telling us contradictory things, but at its spiritual core, the Lord is not trying to give us a moral lesson. He's trying to instruct us in what you're talking about there, that our internals and our externals need to work together, or we will be inconsistent and there will be problems for us. That's what the parable's about. So let's just pray. Lord, we are truly grateful for this opportunity to come together, to share, to know you, to break. But Lord, it's our heart's cry that the world in its darkness will know your light, that you'll put courage in our hearts, that we will go forth and gently shine your light into people's hearts and minds, that they can know you, that they can be enriched, that they can find hope and courage and walk this path towards heaven with you. Amen.
Amen.
So I'm going to share the screen. And as I say, take over at any time if you want and interrupt. I'm happy with those interruptions. I'll share the screen and let's see how this goes. There we are. Can we all see that?
Not yet.
Not yet?
It's all black over here.
All black?
Darren Brunner has started screen sharing.
Yeah, okay, now.
Yes, look at this. This is great. The real power of acknowledging the Lord. Sacred. That's beautifully clear.
Oh, good, good. Well, look, what I'll do is I'll hook through the parable real quickly.
Yep.
Then I'll read the introduction, and then I want people to jump in there with what's coming up for them. As we read through this, stuff's going to come up for you. So let's just see. Luke 16:1-13. And he said also unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him, and he said unto him, how is it that I hear this of you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. To beg I am ashamed. I'm resolved what to do, that when I'm put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him. And he said unto the first, how much owest thou unto my Lord? He said, 100 measures of oil. We said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, write 50. Then said he to another, how much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. He said unto him, take your bill and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward. Now, I've always been bothered by that. The Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of mammon or money of unrighteousness, that when you fail, they will receive you into everlasting habitations. That he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon or money, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. So I'm going to read the introduction now, but take a moment if you want, jump in with something that stood out for you while I move the screen.
Well, it's Bill here, just jumping in as usual. You know, that it's to do with the worldly world and the personalized thing. This guy, he changes the whole thing. Well, you owe so much, you better pay the whole lot back or else. To, you owe so much here. I'll be nice to you, and you know, you only have to pay half of it. So he's converted a legal debt into a sort of a little bit of a personal blessing. And the process of doing that, of the people who receive that blessing, they're happy. And really, it seems to me that the world that Jesus would like to see would be where that happens a fair bit. That you know, I know you owe me $100, but look, don't worry about it. I'll sort of forgive that debt.
Yes.
And it doesn't, like algebraically, mathematically, it doesn't sort of work out because, but when it comes to personal stuff, and it's a bit hard to put this into words, but from that point on, those people that he was generous to on behalf of his, this very successful boss, they will be nice to him because he was nice to them. So he's turned it into a nicer little world. So that's what it sort of looks like to me, anyway.
Sounds really good to me, Bill. I could probably end the meeting now. You just kind of nailed it. Anybody else want to jump in with a thought, or what came up for you, something that struck you, or a question or anything?
I think, I definitely think that this might be looking at, say, the proprium and the Lord taking away the stewardship is like him saying, oh, you're not allowed to invest in this sense of self. And then obviously the repaying of debts is basically demonstrating that you are not putting those things first. You are not investing in the things of the natural world, being the debts or the money that is owed. But
Jordan,
that's about that's all I've got from it.
Look, I would say, again, this is only my understanding of it, but I think you're really on the money there too. The steward is our ego. I really do think it's our ego that, that we're given something, like he was an accountant or a manager, the difference between a manager of a business and the owner of the business. So you're onto something there, Jordan. We'll come into that a bit later. And that whole releasing the debt, that's important. Anyone else want to jump in with something? No? Sure. All right, we'll keep going. Jump in at any time. I'll share the screen again and we'll read the introduction.
Well, look, Hank, now.
Yes.
Okay, now hang on. Look, Jordan, that is a beautiful dress. That dress that she's wearing is that she's got that black background. You see, I'm a registered fashionista, Darren. You know that.
I do.
That's a beautiful dress she's wearing. And I would like an answer to the question that what her hair looks really beautiful. I wonder, is that a new style you've got, Jordan?
Her hair frizzes like that. She tries to get it out, but sometimes it frizzes.
No, this is actually a shirt, and I've had this for years.
Well, you're looking really good, kid. That's what I can say.
Thank you.
Good on you, Bill, for throwing that celestial comment in there.
I can't help it.
Let's jump back to the screen for a moment. It'll take a moment to come up, but let me read on. Introduction. This is certainly one of the strangest parables the Lord ever
Not
told.
yet. We haven't seen it yet. Just a moment. Yep. Yeah. Wait a moment. Yeah.
That's okay. Now. Well, as long as you can hear me, I'll keep reading. So it's definitely one of the strangest parables the Lord ever told. There have been centuries of debate over this meaning. Lots of theology over this. Within 5 sentences, the Lord appears to make 2 statements that directly contradict each other. He tells us to go and make friends with unrighteous money. And he does say that. That's what he does say. And then he finishes the parable by telling us you cannot serve God and money. So what exactly is going on here? It's not until we get to the spiritual sense of the word that any of this parable can rise above its apparent contradiction. I would like to say, though, often when you come across sacred text and it's contradicting itself, they're often the richest times. If you'll go for it and you'll look at the contradiction and you'll ask the Lord and you'll dig in, that's when you often get the richest revelations. So the first principle that the Lord wants to give us here is spiritual consistency, which is a higher law of the afterlife. This law requires that all things be true to themselves with no hidden veils of deception. The Lord says elsewhere that what is spoken of in the inner room, that's our inner thoughts and feelings and desires, will be shouted from the rooftop, manifested into the external world, especially when we're in the realms of heaven and hell. Those who are wise understand this, and they attempt to live their lives in such a way that their external actions are true or in agreement with their internal desires or convictions. Now, have you got to go, Jordan, have you? All right. Sorry about that, Dale. We love you. It was good to have her here for a little while. She's got another meeting she has to go to. Think about this, right? We invite people over for dinner, and if the house is a bit messy, we tidy it up before they get there, and we try to get it as nice as we can. How comfortable would you be with having people over to your inner chamber, your thoughts and your feelings? It's like, I can't get that graffiti off my wall. So, this parable is about revealing the contradictions between our inner states and our outer actions and thoughts and words, the things that people see versus the things people don't. That's the first principle that the Lord's wanting to highlight to us. He's saying to us, look, when you leave the body, you're going to come into a reality where nothing will be anymore. Think about this. I might feel love towards someone, but I won't tell them. Why? Well, maybe I'm afraid of being rejected. I might feel anger, resentment, or hate towards someone, but I won't tell them. Why? Because they'll judge me and see me as harsh. And so we hide things inside ourselves. And that's what the Lord's trying to get to, is get to those things, those inconsistencies. So those who are wise understand this principle, and they attempt to live their lives in such a way that the external actions are true or in agreement with their internal desires and convictions. The second principle is the power of acknowledgement. See, the steward here initially was not acknowledging his master's goods as belonging to the master. He took them to be his own. So he mistook the Lord's funds. But I want you to notice that even once he was exposed, he kept being true to himself. He didn't try and lie and say, I didn't do it. Instead, he thought, well, I'm going to, like the song, Hey Jude, don't make this bad. Take a sad song and make it better. He true to himself, he said, how can I turn this around, something valuable out of this? I know, I will cancel some debts. And that's what he went on to do. Now, the second principle is acknowledgement, especially acknowledging the Lord. The good steward, or the advancing soul, that's you and me, hopefully, the good steward understands and behaves faithfully with the resources placed under their control. I can't say I've always done that, though. There's plenty of times in my life where I've misused the Lord's funds. Life's resources do not belong to the soul, but to the Lord of souls. And even though earthly reality leads us to believe we are the controller, it's an illusion, and we must give an account of our choices and lifestyle. So people want to jump in there with any thoughts, questions, or responses?
Bill here, Darren. It's I've never ever seen this parable as odd, or because I'll give you examples. There was somebody ringing me up. This is quite a long time ago, and they were going to come and do an audit of my tax. This was like a threat. We're going to come out and audit you, mate. And I said, thank you. This is such a flaming mess. We would greatly appreciate someone who understands all this stuff. I mean, I don't understand it. My wife's doing her best. Thank you very much. Now, when would you like to come? And they didn't come. And because it was some sort of a taxation office threat. And you'll get somebody, they're coming into your door, they're coming into your office to deliver some ultimatum of some sort. And when they arrive, you say, "Oh, Henry, I haven't seen you for it's the last time you come in here to how are you feeling? How's your wife's gout? This and that," and that we treat people the way that the Lord wants. The Lord wants us to have a giving, happy, nice, friendly relationship with people. It doesn't matter whether they think they're coming to shut us down or whatever. So even though this dishonest steward was dishonest, he the way that he resolved his problem, we don't even know whether it was resolved. It was the Lord that praised him, but I don't know whether his boss praised him, did he? But anyway, I've always thought that this was just that Jesus, who knew all about the way that things work in the world. So I've never been bothered by it, but there's something about business calculations and equations, and you owe this, so you better pay this or other. All that business stuff.
Give it a sec, Bill. It's just breaking up.
Yeah.
Hey,
by the way, yeah. By the way, Darren, I like this idea of everything breaking up, and because our intention, it's quite clear we all are intending to look at this thing, but the way it turns out is a bit.
It's the way it turns out. Yes, well said.
Does it?
It's breaking up again.
It's a little like it's a bit like the parable.
Mm-hmm.
The intention of the dishonest steward was to make himself popular with these people. Well, we don't know whether he did a good job of it or not, but his intention was to be nice to them. I can't really put this into words, but I've got an awareness. I've always thought about this parable, and I've thought, well, it's what a sensible person would do, given the resources that he's got. Anyway,
the Lord does say that the children of this world are wiser than the children of light. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? Like
about money.
Yeah, about money, about principles. I mean, money's just a principle, isn't it? It's just another principle.
Yeah, but I don't know that they're wiser in terms of being nice, though.
Well,
can I just add something in here?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, I was reading through this thing last night, and it's interesting, just why I interjected just here, is the word used for wiser in this passage is actually more accurately expressed as prudent. So he was being prudent, not necessarily wise. So the Lord wasn't necessarily saying he thought this person wise, just prudence, which in this context makes a lot more sense.
Does. That's very good, Darren. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you for jumping in. Well, let's dig in. Let's dig in real quick. I'm going to break down each part for you, and I'm just giving a spiritual sense to it as best I understand. So again, I want you to interject with thoughts, feelings, ideas, or questions. So let's go back to sharing the screen here. It'll take a moment to come up, as always, but let me start reading, and then you can just catch up as it comes on your screen. There was a certain rich man who was a steward. Now, this is the understanding I get from that. This is the Lord. The rich man is the Lord working through the heavenly ego to confront the lower ego. So that the heavenly ego here is the business. A rich man who's running a business. His business is set up with a certain amount of order. That's the heavenly ego. And the steward is there to look after that. That's our lower ego, the part of us that gets us in trouble. The same was accused to him that he had wasted his good. The lower ego condemning and judging the advancing soul. Okay, so in the spiritual sense here, your own ego will often turn on you and condemn you, isn't it? That's what's happening there.
Just say something else here
Yeah,
as well for
yeah.
a second. Just on that passage there that you're talking about there, it's also worth reflecting that this follows immediately after the parable of the son, the
Prodigal son.
prodigal son, yeah. So keep that in mind because it follows straight onto that, and you can start to see a bit of a connection there as well.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Darren. And he called him and he said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? So whenever God's asking you a question, it's not, God is not trying to get information. When God asks a question, he's trying to get us to think, reflect, self-examine, trying to get us to do the examining. Give an account of your stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. So here is spiritual combats designed to free us from the lower ego. The day of judgment, it occurs any and every time an aspect of the lower ego is exposed and being subjugated. In the truest sense, judgment is really just a reordering of things into their true state. Thus, good is being separated permanently from evil and so on. In any judgment moment, the lower ego may no longer be allowed to rule over the mind. So you're going to give up your stewardship is what it's saying. But what will happen to the soul if it is still under the lower ego's power? In the final judgment, after leaving the body, the unregenerate soul must depart with the lower ego into its own states. Therefore, the Lord works tirelessly to deliver the soul out from under the lower ego's power and bring it under the guidance and leadership of the heavenly ego. Does that make sense? Are there thoughts, questions, ideas around that?
Well, it's pretty good stuff, but I'm a bear of little brain, and I usually have to take a little while to have a good look at this, but it sounds good.
Bill,
the higher ego. Yep.
Bill, I'll send through a copy of this PDF to the Google group, so that will allow you a chance to even have another look at it later. Yeah. That's it. The Lord's always trying to reorder our life. That's what he's trying to do. Any other thoughts before we jump on? No? The steward said within himself. So this is, again, our self-talk, our belief systems, based on the lower ego too, right? The lower ego. What shall I do? For my Lord takes away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. To beg, I am ashamed. So suddenly we're having revelations that the lower ego is not really in control and that it has no life in itself. It's quite a shock when you have these moments in your life. I'm resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So here we have an external form of wisdom highlighting a pearl of internal wisdom, that true and full submission to God will render peace, happiness, and eternal habitations. So the steward here is saying, I need to clear some debts. I need to make amends here. And even though it's somebody else's debts that he's clearing, the principle is still true. You know, when we forgive someone who's done wrong against us, I like to say it this way. How can I not forgive someone who owes me $100 worth of spiritual debt when I owe the Lord millions of dollars of spiritual debt? You know, of course I release them of their debt. It's not really my power to release them anyway, but the act using the lower ego to release them of the debt they hold against you, that's kind of what's being brought up in the spiritual sense of the text here for me. The advancing soul understands the power of habits, conscious rituals based on deeper values and principles. So John, for example, does his meditating in the evening. We have Russell doing his in the morning. I do a bit of both. I'll get up in the morning, I'll do a little bit of meditating first thing in the morning on sacred texts and stuff, I'll meditate. And then I like to close the night with a little bit as well. We all have rituals and habits that we've realized work for us. A soul warrior seeks to not only act outwardly in accord to higher values, they're endeavoring to live and love them as well. This is the real challenge for us, folks. We know that we're aspiring to higher values, but we've got to learn to love them as well. So I'm continually taking account of myself and saying, I'm doing this because it's right, but internally I'm still not really wanting to do it. So I'm learning to bring a consistency into my life. And he said, this is getting good, 100 measures of oil. Now 100, whenever you think of 100, I want you to think of a complete process. I could put a cake in the oven and it says cook it for 60 minutes. When 60 minutes is up, there's your 100. Anytime the scripture says 100, it's a complete process. The cake might still be a little wet in the middle, but the point is that you've come to a point of a complete cycle. He said 100 measures of oil, and he said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. Now 50 speaks of the Jubilee. So this is a revelation that the Lord alone is mercy, the Lord alone is love. That's the 50 or Jubilee, the releasing of all debts occurring within you. So I release you of your $100 debt to me, knowing that really God alone is the one who is mercy itself. I have no mercy without God. Then he said to him, to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measure of wheat. So there's 100 again. He said to him, take it, write your bill for score. So now we have the revelation here that the Lord alone is real wisdom. Even though I think I'm being wise, I'm giving credit back to the Lord. I'm realizing it's the Lord who is mercy. It's the Lord who's wisdom. The Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely, or as Darren said, prudently, urgently. I often wonder in this parable, when did he do this debt releasing? Like he gets for his master. Does he have to go and get the books? Is he doing this debt releasing while he's in the process of getting the books? When does he do all this debt releasing? It doesn't really tell us. But like Darren said, he has done prudently. When you're in spiritual processes, what I found, when your ego's being exposed, some new light is being shed on you, don't hesitate. Act straight away. Do something. Change the way you're doing things. Do it immediately. Go and make a call. Write to someone. Change the way you do it immediately. Because if you don't act straight away, I often find it can slip into the realm of forgetfulness of eternity. It's just gone. I have a habit when someone says, oh, Pastor, pray for me. I'll pray from right then and there, even if it's in a shopping center, because too often I'd say, yeah, I'll pray for you. And then days and weeks would go by and then I'd realize I never prayed for them. Be prudent here. It's acting prudently. A situation is coming up inside you. You're going through a spiritual battle. Act. That's the time to act, to do something about it. For the children of this world in their generation are wiser than the children of light. So this is about being hot, being cold, because when you're lukewarm, you're not good for either. You're better off being hot or you're better off being cold. And I say to you, make for yourselves friends of mammon, or the money of unrighteousness. This is the bit, Bill, that really stumps the theologians. Your simple, loving, beautiful heart didn't get stumped by this, but my more theological heart gets troubled. How could you tell me, Jesus, to go and make friendship with unrighteous money? But when you get to the spiritual sense of what he's saying be true to yourself. You will not get spiritual progress if you are lying to yourself. That's what we do. The ego often lies to itself. But here the steward, or the ego, is caught out. It doesn't try to hide it. Just
Darren,
yes.
Excuse me. Darren, doesn't Emanuel Swedenborg address this in his descriptions of these people that in their lives they thought, well, how I'm going to wear a hair shirt and I'm going to live in this...
Just say that last 30 seconds again, Bill. It broke up a bit. Hang on. Say it again.
People, the way to get to heaven is to wear a hair shirt and sort of fast and live a miserable sort of life. But
yeah.
And that when they get up there, they find that God's not terribly interested in somebody's just sitting around miserable all the time. It is making the most. God is interested in making the most of what he's given in this world, and the particular personal gifts we're given. And this, I think that this is like, I can't make yourselves friends of the mammon of.
Okay, well, Bill, here's a, if I could just jump in, here's a really good example. John and I were talking just before you got on about how there are tennis courts in heaven, weren't we, John? We were talking about there are tennis courts in heaven. He was saying, look, I got out to play a bit of tennis. I know it's not real spiritual, but I got out to the tennis. But then it dawned on me that he was filling his joy tank, his love and joy tank. He was sparking his joy. That gives him more joy to give to other people throughout his day. So often the things that we think are not spiritual or unrighteous mammon are really actually really quite good things. You know, get in, if it's filling your life with joy and happiness and that gives you more to give to others, go for it.
But look, can I just jump in and ask, any time I've ever tried to play tennis, there's it's about 10 inches in diameter, and that so you throw the ball up in the air and you do that, and I've never been able to connect with it. I wonder whether those heavenly tennis. But so I'm so hopeless at tennis. Bounce it, hit it at the top, you know, like as if playing ping pong. And so I might have a look when I get there and just check all those heavenly tennis rackets, see if they've got big holes in them.
They've got these spiritual. No, Bill. They've got these spiritual strings from the tennis ball going down to the racket. When you hit it in heaven, you always connect. You always connect with the ball. It's not cheating. It's not cheating.
Praise the Lord.
That's good.
Praise the Lord.
Any other thoughts? We'll jump into this last little bit. Any other thoughts there? Okay. So where were we? Make for yourselves friends of mammon of unrighteousness. In other words, like you were saying, Bill, it's about having the friendship, the right attitude, treating, you know, what we often think is unrighteous. If we treat it with the right heart, it ends up serving. You know, the writings tell us that the lower ego is there to serve the higher ego. You cannot be saved without a proprium, without an ego. I would love to get rid of it, but I can't. It's just there. We all have it, and you need it to get saved. So the advancing soul, rectifying inconsistencies between the internal and external states. So go and make yourselves friends of mammon of unrighteousness. Go through your soul and look for all the inconsistencies where you're externally doing one thing, but internally your love is not there with it, and bring the two together. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. Now, this is the real key, I believe. This is what the Lord's really getting on. It's about the spiritual principle. He that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. Now, this is it. Self-deception is the most destructive of all deceptions, whereas honesty in the inward parts produces lasting consistency after the completion of one's spiritual battles. So if we've all had experiences of someone being deceptive and lying to us, and then when we find out, we're utterly devastated. I can't believe that person did that or said this or whatever. And that's destructive. There's no doubt that deception is destructive. It's one of the big 10, thou shalt not lie. But this parable is telling us self-deception is the most destructive of all. And this steward wasn't lying to himself. He was caught out. He knew he'd done wrong, and he went and quickly was prudent and fixed the things as best as he can. So, two, we are to look at ourselves and say, hey, there are times where I've been misusing God's resources. Instead of justifying it, I let a judgment occur. Lord, I've been misusing your resources here. What do I do? Clear your debts. Clear your debts. How do I clear my debts? Next time someone gets upset with you and is angry, and you want to judge them, therefore they're now in debt to you $10, remember how much you owe me. How far in debt are you to me? Okay, Lord, I will not hold their $10 debt against them. So that's what I get from the text. If therefore you have not been faithful in unrighteous mammon, who will commit you to trust the true riches, eternal life, heaven. If you can't be faithful in a world of appearances where you can get away with things, who's going to give you the eternal world? Resistance towards the lower ego is essential if the soul is to receive the gift of the heavenly ego. So there you go. No, I missed a line, sorry. No, that was it. Resistance towards the lower ego is essential if the soul is to receive the gift of the heavenly ego. In other words, we've got to keep examining ourselves, keep finding out where I've been unfaithful, and become faithful. And if you've not been faithful with that, which is another man's, so the Lord is the writings teach us the Lord is the only one who is truly ego, truly alive, truly I. We get to appear to be alive in ourselves. Isn't that an incredible gift? We get to appear to be, and if we're faithful with that, he will give us an eternal heavenly ego. And what have I written there? The realization that the lower ego, the higher ego, one's life and all that consists thereof is truly a gift from the Lord. And then the last bit here, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. It's this principle about being consistent. If you're outwardly acting righteously, but inwardly you're not, one's going to win out. So this is the acknowledgement, the Lord, and the acknowledgement of our own nature, how inconsistent our own nature is. And I've written a little conclusion here. The Lord earnestly desires to warn us and highlight to us the importance of doing spiritual work. Those states within us that are complete, there's your 100 wheat or your 100 oil, they're now ready for regeneration. And this can only occur through internal honesty and surrendering of ownership, like the steward. Okay, this state's ready. Lord, I'm in debt to you. I release my debts to others. It's this surrender of ownership over all the goods and truths that have been seeded into our soul. And that's the conclusion of what the parable is saying. Realizing that whatever good I have and whatever truth I have, it's really coming from the Lord. Now, I put the spiritual focus in here to push us into action. Learn to spot where you are being inconsistent. Ask yourself why. Is it for good reasons or is it for selfish reasons? Does this inconsistency cause me to violate my core inner values? Are you finding yourself or your lower ego justifying your actions, and how might this change for you? So I'll send this through, this whole email, to people, and I encourage you, print it out and write something in there. Take an action and write something in there. And I've given you an example down here just in case people find it a bit hard. I find myself not sharing how I feel about people, about their choices, about their actions, because I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to damage any relationships. And yet, by not finding the right words, I am harming others. So I'm just using that example of how I can be inconsistent. I'm thinking and feeling one way about a person, and I'm not doing anything about it. I just pretend, oh yeah, everything's fine. Instead, I should be going to that person and saying, you know, when you said and did this, that bothered me. Can we talk a bit about that, please? Something like that. So that's just an example. But I encourage you to take your own example here, print it out. So I throw it back over to the group now. Let's have some thoughts about what's coming up for you. Is the parable a little clearer? Did we get to the bottom of these? Do you feel encouraged? So I'll stop sharing the screen. I'll mute. Please take over, everyone, and share your thoughts.
Well, Darren, I really appreciate the way that you these things and describe them into these very sensitive interpersonal relationships, ego, the self, etc. I think that's I appreciate that, and I'm thinking back to some of your teachings on Revelation with the things that happen, and then the bowls of passion that follow with it. You know, I've been, I'm grateful for your teaching, and it's all pretty, it's all pretty.
Just breaking up there again, Bill. But
you've got a really good, clear knowledge of theology. Well, that's all right. That's that's who I am. I break up a fair bit.
Mm. Well, I can say, Bill, I'm grateful for all of you, because if I didn't have people to share with, I think sometimes when we get to share, it you know, there's a saying, the teacher learns more than the student. Having people to share with is such a blessing, because when we break bread and we share the meal, that's where we're really enriched. So I'm grateful for you too.
Right.
I'll throw it at Russell. He's sitting there quietly. Anything jump out for you? Did you get something from today?
Oh yes, that last paragraph was, it was all good, all right, but the last one certainly hit home, to do with someone that's being offensive and not wanting to hurt their feelings, knowing that it could deeply upset them if I say anything. But the way you phrased it was good, saying that, you know, you said something or did something that didn't feel right, and trying to get it across without offending them and having a chat about it. I don't find that easy at times.
And that's an important part of getting your inconsistency out. When I know, being a married man, and I think we all married here. Most of us, we're pretty much married, yeah. But we've got really close friendships, and we value those friendships. And over time, we've had to push the uncomfortableness a little bit. And that, to me, is about getting my inconsistencies out for the Lord. Yeah. Thank you, Russell. Sorry.
Can I sound a yes? Sorry. Can I sound a little warning here that did anyone ever read a book by Eric Byrne called "Games People Play" years ago? This is where he. I have it,
and I read bits and pieces that I've been thinking about going back and reading it just the last couple of days.
Well, this was what was it? What was it called? Transactional analysis. See, if each of us, the ego has got three bits. There's the parent, the adult, and the child. And so if you decide, you say, look, Henry, I'm going to give you a bit of good advice about the way that you appear, such and such. And then if you come across like a teacher to an errant child, if one person talks to the child of another, it's
lines broken.
So either
we lost you again for a second there, Bill.
Oh, okay. Well, if you talk down to somebody, either their parent will respond and say, "Don't talk to me like that."
It's true.
Will say, "Go."
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether your computer is too far away from your router.
Yeah, breaking up again. Sorry, Bill, it's breaking up.
Oh, yeah, well,
I think I get what you're saying.
Right.
You get what you're saying that.
Well, I may write it down for you sometime. That it's called vermin. Particularly if your wife or mother has ticked you off, you know, and you know they're terribly frightened of cockroaches. Like you're like they'll be giving you some really good advice you don't want to hear, and you say that would be the biggest cockroach I've ever seen. Just look past it. I've got a whole lot of techniques like that. There's a ding in the air conditioner, and these are so. It's all very well deciding that I must tell somebody where they have erred, but really the best way is to confess it yourself and say, look, you know, I'm a shocking sort of a person that, you know, my thinking that I should tell you that that you've got a bit of gooey just coming out of your nose down there like that, and but I shouldn't be doing that. You've got to be very careful. So
Phil,
I'm with Russell here.
Yes, Phil, that's marvelous. If I can just quickly recap from what you just said, I think about how if I can humble myself and be more authentic, vulnerable, and honest with people, I'm helping them and me acknowledge that the Lord alone is mercy. The Lord, he's a merciful one. So yeah, I love it. I love what you said there. Hey, John, something that jumped out for you?
Oh, I've been reflecting on quite a bit of it. I certainly the last paragraph. I deal with in semi-retirement. I deal with a number of people that life hasn't been too good to, and sometimes they've been dealt a bad hand, but on other times they've put themselves right in it, and it's how to help them out of it. And I think some of the things you've said have been useful for me to maybe take a different approach with some of these people I go over and take out shopping and doing other things with. But also I was reflecting earlier where part of the debt was forgiven, and being a maths teacher, that just didn't equate for me, Darren. I agreed with the principles, but there was this lower ego math that was just saying no. But thank you.
It is so important. It is so important to remember this is not a moral parable. He's not telling us the parable how to act. He's telling us the parable so we can get the principles of spiritual consistency and acknowledging the Lord. They're the two principles that come from it. So live a life where you're consistent, internal and external, and acknowledge the Lord. They're those two things, yeah. But like you, John, the mathematician in you gets upset at the equations. So, Darren, how did you go? Can you share something with us? What came up for you?
Yeah, I found it interesting that when we look at the way this Unjust Steward acted, and yes, it was prudent, but I also get a sense that his actions have conformed with what he loves, which is the world and himself. And he's not separated those. So he has also not served two masters. And that fits in with what you were saying about with consistency. His acts have been false or misleading, and that has conformed with his love of self because he's all about looking after himself there. That also takes me to think about the way Swedenborg tells us about the way things are in the next life in heaven and hell, and how those of like stay together. So I can get an image of those people whose debts he forgave on this negative side of things, not on the positive side that Bill spoke about before, but from a more negative side, I can get a sense of those people hanging together out of self-interest. So he is accepted by those because he's helped them, and as long as he doesn't tell his master what he's done, they still owe him, so they will still stand by him. And so there's a self-interest in them all being together. So I find it interesting that the Lord is showing us how prudent things work, and it works at all levels, but you get what you seek, for want of a better way of putting it.
I'd like to share one other example real quickly too. I don't want to overdo this, but you know, there are some songs written by people that are not good. They're not good songs, but they're attractive. Do you know what I mean? Like you could tap your feet to them. You're drawn in. The melody, the words, you just love the song, but you know that the message of the song ain't so good. What's attractive there is there's no inconsistency. The songwriter is being true to themselves. They're just letting it out. I know over the years I've exposed myself to a lot of different music, and I've been looking for spiritually uplifting songs and music, and you listen to some of them and you go, yeah, the words are good, the melody's okay, but it's not attractive. It's like the spiritual song and what I'm not attracted to is the inconsistency. The person is telling me what I want to hear. They're not telling me who they really are. So there's this principle here, heaven and hell are what they are because they're true to themselves. There's a consistency there, and there's something lukewarmish, unattractive about inconsistency. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Yeah. That was really good, Darren. Thank you. Yeah, and Guan, how did Guan go?
I think it is very hard to make a consistency between the external us and the internal one. I'm recently considering a question. You see, we new church people have the chance to learn Swedenborg's writing so that we can understand the Bible better, deeper. So in this way, are we certainly better than the traditional Christian? I think I didn't find me be better than before. Why is that? What is the force, or what is the energy to make us better than the people who believe in God but who don't know the deeper or the true truth? It is depending on us or depending on the Lord leader. And because not only me, I'm seeing that our Chinese society, the people, only a small group of people who are studying the Swedenborg's writing. Some of them never read the Bible. Some of them are coming from the traditional Christianity. But there is already a conflict. What is the force pushing us in doing the things like this? Are we controlling, or are we influenced by the devil? Because we are closing to the heaven, or something else? I'm thinking about this. I hope I can get some answer someday. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Guan. That's good. You know, I think it's fair to say that devils and angels are fighting there, but at least the people who are in conflict are being true to themselves. You know, like if they're in your group and they're hearing these truths and they're kind of kicking back at them, at least they're being honest and saying, I'm having an issue with this. So there's something good there. You know, here's another thought too in what you said as well, and that is, we are definitely far better off. We're blessed. The riches that we have to look at with the writings, the spiritual understanding that Swedenborg has given us, we're so far better off, but we're also more accountable. We're more I'm thinking about this parable here, steward, money, accountability. We're more accountable because we have that understanding. How much more important it is for us to make sure that we are doing something in our lives and for others, but in our lives, we're doing something with this teaching, or we'll be doubly accountable for hearing these truths and just going, yeah, that was nice, you know, and just not doing anything with it. So, yeah. Bill, anyone?
We can't say that we didn't know. We can't say we didn't know the stuff that was written so we can understand it. But his right, I think there's Dr. Rose who helped out. That's a really beautiful and easy to read book, that one. So we can't say that we don't understand evil spirits and angels and stuff after we've read his writing. So you're right, Darren, that you know, we can't say, oh look, I just didn't understand, because we do now have a very clear, sensible and rational understanding of right and wrong and evil and truth. My wife was listening last night to an interview with Kim Novak, who's 87. You know, the beautiful film star, Kim Novak? She's 87, and I was just listening, and she never said a negative thing about any one person, and she spoke about the truth of her own self, and I could tell that this woman she's headed for heaven, because it was truth, and she's happy. The thing that went together was truth and not being judgmental and her own personal happiness. It was really, really lovely.
I'll have to look that interview up. Any last thoughts? Because we'll close in prayer now. Is there anyone want to throw anything in? Last thoughts in? No? Nope. Well, Lord, we are so grateful that where we're hungering, you're filling us. But Lord, we don't take that for granted. Let us continue to grow in hunger and want more, and let us exercise faithfully with what you give us, so that we grow and grow and grow. We ask, Lord, that we will become good stewards and use this life that you've given us to bless others and to make this world a better place. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay,
yeah, well,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you for hosting us,
See you
Juan.
later.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Okay, I have recorded from the beginning. I will upload it to the YouTube later. Thank you.
Thank you. Blessings.
Thank you.
I'll put the PDF through. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.